Hi there, my name's Maren Gamble. I'm a core consultant with the Infrastructure Health and Safety Association. I'm here today to talk to you about the policy statement requirement in the Core 2020 standard. So for this, I just want to start off by saying that we're going to be working on the tool, the addition of the Core 2020 tool that is labeled June 2020. And I'm recording this on April the 12th in 2022, just so you understand sort of the currency date around the information that I'm looking at. I will also, during the course of this recording, be accessing the Core 2020 Handbook. This document is dated the July 2020 edition. So if you're watching this recording and a newer edition has come out, please be aware of any differences that may have arisen. What I'm going to do today is talk, as I mentioned, about the policy statement requirements in the Core 2020 standard that you'll find throughout the tool. What we're going to do is walk through where you find them, what they're about, and how to be successful on them. In order to do that, I think the best place to start is the Core 2020 Audit tool. This is the questions that we're talking about. This is where you'll find them. So I've started at the IHSA homepage, IHSA.ca. And if you scroll down just a little bit on the page, you'll find this core arrow. And when you hover over it, as I just did, you'll see the subpages available. So I'm going to navigate to Core 2020. And within here, I can find interesting information always pops up here to tell you what's most current, but our resources will be found here as well. So you can find the Core 2020 Audit tool, and when you click on it, it will begin to download. So if I bring the Core 2020 Audit tool up for you to see, it generally opens up here to the cover page. It's navigated through the tabs at the bottom of the screen. And there are other videos available that will talk about various things in this, but I'm going to navigate to number 1, health and safety policy as a starting point. What you'll find here is that element 1.1 here specifically is the health and safety policy. This is the health and safety policy statement that really defines the overall commitment to the health and safety management system from your top manager in your organization. For this one, there are some very specific elements that we want to see included in it, and they are outlined here in a question-by-question manner. So for this, we're going to be looking at one policy statement document and asking, does it reflect all of these different requirements that you'll see listed here? This is something that you would have seen in the previous core, if you're familiar with it, and something that you would have in your health and safety management system under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So this will be probably a little bit more familiar to people coming in. The additional policy statement requirements are the ones where we do get a little bit more question. So if we start navigating to some of the other elements that you'll find, so I'm just going to go to the next one, number 2, hazard assessment. And I look at the very first question in each case. So point 1, in this case, it's 2.1. As we navigate through, it'll 3.1, 4.1, you get the point. The first question in each of them talks about a policy statement again. This is different than that policy statement in element 1.1. This is a policy statement specific for the topic in question. So here now we're talking about a policy statement for hazard assessment. It doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to capture the idea of the definition of a policy statement. The next logical question is, what is the definition of a policy statement? To help answer those sorts of questions, we have included a definitions tab in the tool. If I scroll over past all of the element tabs, I get to the definition tab here at the back. Clicking on it, there's lots of good information here. Anything that's bolded throughout the tool, you'll be able to find here, and policy was one of those bolded options. So if I go here and read about it, it tells me that a policy is a general commitment, direction, or intention, and is formally stated by top management. A quality policy statement should express top management's commitment to the implementation and improvement of its management system. So to that end, we really need your policy statements for each of these to really capture the idea of that definition, but not go far beyond that. It doesn't need to be some complicated expression. It can be anywhere from a few sentences to a page or two, whatever sort of fits with your firm's expectations. While we're gathering information about the policy statement, I think it's also important for me to highlight another document that can be a source of resource information when you're figuring out a requirement, like the policy statement, but also others. And that's the Core 2020 Handbook. So if I go back to this Core 2020 subpage that we were on before, you'll notice this document here is the Core 2020 Audit Handbook. Again, if I click on it, it'll begin a download for us to access that document. This is the cover page for it. And if I navigate to sort of the back half of this for now, and I'm looking at page 23 to start here. And again, this is the edition that was dated July 2020. There is a section right here on just a little bit about what the policy statement is intended to be. Again, it's including the definition. You'll notice it's the same definition for consistency here. And it is specifying that each element does have to have a policy statement that is dated and signed by the owner and CEO and demonstrates management's commitment to providing the time, budget, and resources that are needed to effectively sort of implement that element. Here, it's actually reinforcing that statement that I made where it says this could just be a few sentences. It could be longer. It really depends on the element, on your company structure, and on your policy statement format. One thing I do want to mention here too is we don't need this to have a specific title. It doesn't have to be called policy statement policy. We've seen lots of different variations on this, as long as it meets that definition as a general commitment, direction, or intention. So we've seen commitment statements, we've seen other sort of headings for this, but the key is that it does meet that definition and that it is signed and dated by the owner, CEO, whatever your top management person is. In terms of where you're going to have them sign it, the location isn't critical as long as there is a signature that reflects that specific content. So sometimes we'll see this as a signature and a date immediately following the section that is being considered the policy. Sometimes we'll see this put in a header or a footer for the document. And sometimes we'll see that the policy and procedure have been fully written and a signature included after both of them. The reality is all of this is fine as long as you have that signature of approval from that top person associated with your policy statement or whatever you're calling it. Another thing that we do get a lot of questions about is whether we truly need to have a policy statement for each element. And the short answer to that is yes. So each topic does need to be addressed in a policy statement. I'm going to navigate just a little bit further in the handbook because I'd like to show you something to this end. If we get to these charts at the end, there's these sections with the evidence tips that you'll get. And notice that here for, element 2, hazard assessment, analysis, and control, that question 2.1 that we were looking at that talks about the policy statement has a specific tip here. And it does specifically tell us the answer to that question when it says only element-specific policy statements will be considered. It should be a distinct statement focusing on senior management's commitment for this element. And then it gives you some cross-referencing advice as well. I like to also draw the attention when we're talking about what am I writing a policy statement for, to the fact that each element has this description right under the header. It's in the handbook here. It's also in the tool. If I go to element 2 again, you'll notice it's here right under the top. Wherever you're looking at that information from, whether it be the handbook or the tool, this really tells you what the 1 or 2 line summary of the elements focus is. And I think that this is a useful tool in sort of framing, what does your policy statement have to be specific to? The policy statement really is the first question in every element and sub-element beyond that. So if I navigate back to the tool, you'll see it's a very similar format. So element 3 on controls, again, does your organization have a policy statement for controls? I go to 4, it's again, very much the same wording. If we navigate to something that's just slightly different, but very much the same, like element 8, where there's a sub-element, you'll notice that 8.1, the first of the sub-elements, has a policy statement requirement. And if I scroll down in this, there's also a policy statement requirement for the second topic in this sub-element grouping, which is communication in this case. But again, both sub-elements within this element have a policy statement requirement. So if you go through, there are a number of different requirements, and really the intention is just maintaining that specific consistent structure. The Core 2020 tool really does focus on establishing sort of a structured flow through the entire audit in terms of encouraging a structured flow through your system as well. We really do find that systems that are clearly set up with, beginning from management's commitment, moving into the how it's going to be achieved in procedures, demonstrating through implementation, and then managing through communication and document control. This kind of structure works in terms of a systematic approach. And that's why we've used it to structure the tool in this case and really make sure that all the pieces are there. So you will find that, that flow is consistent and that the policy is a key piece of that structure. I'm also going to suggest that once you hit your stride with this policy statement concept, once you know what your firm is going to do, you'll really be able to move through the different commitment pieces with rapid pace. And in each case, they're worth the 2 marks here. So once you kind of get it going and you know how you're going to target it, we're looking for structure, we're looking for consistency. So once you've figured out what your policy statements are going to look like, they're generally all going to look the same. It's just that content that needs to shift to commit to the appropriate topic in each case. Notice here again, there's this description at the top that's going to tell you what the topics are that you're committing to in this case. So with the policy statement, it really does pay to just sort of get it set up, make sure you have that structure, make sure you're hitting those key components, which is just really and truly the definition, the signature, and the date, and you're going to be in good shape to set up the rest of your audit. As with any of our recordings, any of our sessions, if you have any questions that you'd like to connect with one of the core consultants with, please feel free to reach out to core@IHSA.ca, and our team there will be able to refer you to the appropriate person.